If you've seen the video discussing our principles of the 3 Ps, position, pattern, and performance, it talks about understanding how our body is positionally is going to affect our body's pattern, and that in the end will affect how we perform. That not only equates or is involved with our training and understanding what that means for our training, and we've talked about how that involves our breathing, but it also involves how we hold ourselves and position ourselves throughout the day will affect our pattern, which in the end affects our performance. Looking at one thing that most of you guys are out there doing daily is attending a virtual school of some kind, or doing homework, or playing video games. But those positions you're in while you attend your virtual school, whether it's an hour to 4 hours or more in a day, are going to affect your pattern, which in the end is going to affect your performance when you get out on the field. It doesn't happen overnight, though it could happen in a day if you spend a lot of time in one position and affect you and you kind of feel, oh, I don't feel great. It may work its way out. But if you do it over time, that positioning over time creates a more of a permanent pattern, to get another P in there, and then that'll affect that performance. So the first position I want to talk to you about to basically avoid for a long period of time is, hey, I woke up, let's flip on my computer, let's log into class and let's go. Great, but lying in bed and attending class for a couple of hours and hanging out, breathing probably on one side, turning one way, is going to create a turn in your ribs that will create kind of an imbalance in how you function and breathe and move, which then can affect you down the road. Again, it doesn't happen all in one shot, but if this becomes a daily habit for you, it can in the end start to negatively affect how you pattern and perform. So let's talk ribs. Here's our ribs today, all right? So your ribs, they attach to our spine, right? And they wrap around and either attach in the front or they kind of float out in space. All right, so real quick review there. So as we walk and move, our ribs need to walk and move. When we run, they have to move. And then when we shoot, they have to move. And when they don't move well, or one side moves and one side doesn't, over time, that can get us into trouble. Whatever side we're lying on, one side's gonna be closed and one side's gonna be open. And then what's gonna happen is you're gonna hang out and breathe. And all that breathing kind of neurologically resets things. So one diaphragm, which is those breathing muscles right underneath the ribs, one side's in a position to breathe better than the other. So then you kind of start to breathe and create a pattern that's gonna affect your performance. Again, it doesn't happen right away, but over time, if this is a daily habit of positioning, it's going to create a pattern that is not going to be positive for your performance. There's a lot of P's in that thing. So the next position I want to talk to you about is when you sit with your back to the wall and your legs out straight. So when we talk about position and pattern, when you sit in that position, the pattern is such that your hamstrings are long. And when a muscle is long, it has a tendency to kind of, let's say, turn down, or even, we'll say, shut off, to keep it simple. Well, what does that mean? Well, the hamstrings are a big deal. They help control our pelvis, they help control a lot of things, and they help move us around. And so we don't want long, loose hamstrings. We want solid, supple hamstrings. Like, what happens? You sit with your back to the wall, right? So your hamstring attaches onto this little bone here, and it comes down and attaches back here to the back of your knee. There's a few parts to your hamstring, but we'll keep it simple with one. So when you sit and your leg is out straight, that hamstring is long, and over time it kind of loosens. And then when you stand up to go to move, a lot of things aren't going to be functioning right, especially if you've been there a long time. Because there's a lot of other tissues, muscles, ligaments, tendons, beyond the hamstring that are going to be affected. When you sit in that position, your butt shuts off. It may be comfortable at the moment, but in the end, it's not going to do your body justice. The third position I want to talk to you about is cross-legged sit, or the figure 4, where you sit with your legs crossed in front of you, your computer sits kind of in that little valley, and you type away. Again, for a moment, great. But if you're going to sit there for a long period of time, you're in a position that over time is going to create a pattern within your body that is, again, not going to be great for your performance on the field. And what does that look like? So here we go again. Here's our body, here's our pelvis, and here's our thigh bone. So we talk about position. You sit with your leg crossed, that means this bone has to turn out at the hip. So when we sit and this bone is turned way out, these ligaments get stretched. this ligament gets tight. When you stretch out a ligament, it's kind of like Laffy Taffy. Once a ligament's stretched, it's stretched. We don't want to have these front hip capsules loose or the back ones tight, because that's going to affect our pattern and our performance. Because when you stand up, then it's going to change how we move and groove, and we don't want that. And again, it doesn't happen right away, but over time, day in and day out, if that's how you're holding yourself when you're doing your virtual school, your homework, playing video games, just hanging out in life, that in the end, it could have a negative effect on your performance. One other position we see a lot of people sit in that has a big negative effect is the W sit. I can't even demonstrate it because my body doesn't bend that way, but I know the younger bodies and sometimes the female body will bend that way. A W sit kind of falls in the same world as the cross-legged sit. It may feel comfortable, but in the end, you're stretching a lot of things out that don't need to be stretched out, and then that's going to potentially open you up for some issues when you go out to perform. So let's avoid the W sit. Let's avoid the cross-legged sit. Let's avoid the long seated sit with your back against the wall or the legs out straight. So then what can we do? We've taken all the fun spots away. Well, let's talk about that in the next